I want to do a couple videos about the problems that indie comics. I was fucking gonna include lots of lip smacking. I want to do more. I'm pledging myself to do more vocal fry. Is that how you do it? But one of the
Or breath, more being out of breath.
being being well, I'm out of breath all the time because comics. Are just comics.
Just had enough. Just had enough of this.
Should
Comics.
comics be burning in hell? Yes.
Should they? Yes. Will they? Yes.
Yes. The answer to yes,
Is
fucking,
yes.
is yes.
Fuck
Um,
yes.
a few giant, hilarious, um, kind of issues and problems with indie comics that we were talking about. Of course, in our delightful Discord that I don't even link to anymore because, like, we already have enough people, and
Ugh.
we have some delightful people on our Discord, but
Yes.
like I was talking to Flausch yesterday, the fucking nice Thicca artist. Um, we were just I don't know we were talking about crypto, but I also mentioned how social media is it's anti-social. It's never social. Social media isn't, but I was talking about how I've never had to like kick, ban, or block anyone before in my entire life until Discord, until I fucking ran a Discord server. And I never wanted to, but usually what happens is we don't have to, we just run people off. But there are some people who just don't take the hint or fucking think that if they're pissed off at us, that means it's their chance to ingratiate themselves more. So it's like I have to fucking. Sometimes you just have to fucking boot somebody and say, "Here, you clearly aren't interested in what we're talking about." Um, but anyways, when it comes to our Discord server, the people there right now are cool. Like we used to have the Comicsgate channel locked down just for approved people to be able to talk there because a bunch of people would show up and just go yeah and wow and then like other stuff that was completely irrelevant.
Just we never needed to hear from any of those people.
Yeah, and then the
Wacky
channel
people.
mainly was for almost like an archival of like hilarious fuck ups. It's a better one than the Kiwi Farms thread. Unironically, it's like not even a fucking opinion there. Like people have been like, oh, you know what, we need to. Where's that one thing? And it's like, oh, looking through the pinned comments and stuff. Whereas on Kiwi Farms, there's a weird amount of butt kissing. But we were able to unlock our fucking unlock the channel recently because I guess people got enough of the hint that we are going to have to just zero tolerance for cape cuckery because that's one of the things about indie comics. One of the problems with the comics community, the fandom. It's the problem with all fandoms, but the problem with the comics fandom is essentially mental illness is one thing, but we'll get to that in another video that will be behind the subscribe star pig paywall. But what I want to talk about in this particular video was that the way that indie comics are not a refuge from the sort of unoriginality of the big two or print comics or the industry, the American industry, the problems with unoriginal because a lot of people say, oh, the problem is social justice or the problem is they insult the customers, which all of those problems are still not only in indie comics, but they're in the parts of the indie comics that say they're against those things. So like people who disrespect the customer, the people who or the people who say, like Comicsgate, for example, says, we're about respecting the customers and giving the customers what they want,
Does
and then
anyone
they
else
don't.
remember that shit?
Yeah,
The fucking the great white hope of fucking Comicsgate.
the Great
It's like
White
we're going to be
Hope.
respecting the customers. Hey, here's a movement called War Campaign that we're working hand in glove with.
It's the Great Hello, My Fellow White Cope. That's really what it's more like in Comicsgate, where it's about that the saying. It's about saying what you're for and then not even remotely being for that, being against it in every way. In fact, that same way that they're they say they're for the customers, and they're swearing up and down that they're about respecting the customers and supporting the customers, and then their comics are late, and several of them, including the biggest people in Comicsgate, like Ethan Van Sciver and Mitch Breitweiser and even Mike S. Miller and those kinds of guys have all basically not only trashed their customers but ripped them off multiple times over. The stories of Ethan ripping off his customers are completely public and well known, to the point where a lot of people are burying their heads in the sand and going into pathological mental illness denial about it. So, but
I
that's
think we're
already been
even
established.
beyond that. We've gone beyond that at this point.
Yeah, that's
It's already been fucking dealt
well
with.
well trodden and objectively proven at this point. So, the bigger problem, though, among all of these other problems in indie comics and the way indie comics are not a refuge from American comics and the American industry, in one of the bigger ways that never gets acknowledged and doesn't really get understood very well, is that they're really not original. Most people making indie comics, they make them as ripoffs of other corporate properties. A lot of ways you
They
see them.
love corporate shill
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, there's a weird worship of corporate properties in the fandom. The way they talk about how much Captain America and Superman and Spider-Man, what they mean to people. That's a worship of a corporate property, and that's cucked inherently. That is inherently cuckoldry to cape shit essentially, and to a corporation, including the woke corporations. But again, it's worse than that. It's bigger than merely the woke corporation. It's any corporation in the concept of a giant money making machine and pretending that it has your feelings and your best interests at heart. It's not just a cope but a delusion, which delusion is a form of mental illness. So, in a way, we've just proven that all comic book fans are inherently mentally ill. But it's neither here nor there in this particular topic. While we're being particular individuals, in fact. But the thing is that a lot of indie comics you see, a ton of them are just being ripoffs of, like, Superman, Captain America. That was another thing. Mike S. Miller, bringing him back up, his big breakout, his tent pole, like first indie comic was literally just a completely generic ripoff of Captain America. It was Captain America without any of the gimmicks or sort of the interesting aspects to his backstory. Um, but on top of that, a lot of the other ones you see recently, especially, aside from, well, there's all the people who pitch their comic as it's Lovecraftian horror, which you see way too many times in indie comics, and that's at least, I guess you could say, ripping off something that's not exactly corporatized, but it's so overplayed that might as well be. It's like an invisible corporation that
Or
sort
it's
of.
saying that you're making a fucking, oh, it's gonna be steampunk.
I mean, if it's public domain, yeah, that's the thing. If you're going around saying, oh, "I'm making a steampunk comic," oh, really? What's it about? It's about steampunk. It's like, okay,
That's
that's
not
that's not
something that it
anything.
can be about.
That's not a yeah, that's not a story. It's not even really a setting. It's more of a style. A setting, would be anywhere else in this steampunk world. It's fucking because it could be in the Arctic, it could be in the jungle, it could be in just the regular grasslands. It could be in like like sort of smoggy Britain of the sort of late 1800s or something, polluted, whatever like that. That's where indie comics tends to just take ideas that are public domain. Like again, Lovecraftian. That's the same as saying I'm going to put King Kong in my comic because it's public domain. That's kind of an announcement of laziness from the writer. Um, and that's
Like, yeah,
that's something I avoid inherently. When I hear that, I tune out immediately. I'm like, okay. But also recently, I see a lot of people who seem to be doing their takeoff of Conan but they can't do Conan because it's owned by either Marvel or Dark Horse, going back and forth. I don't keep up with that shit anymore. Never really that interested in Conan myself, but I understand like the sort of tough guy adventures going around in like sort of light fantasy or dumb fantasy or whatever. That stuff's fine, but people who are like, well, I can't make Conan, so I'm going to just make my own rip off of it. And it's just Conan, but that's the whole idea. Like, they don't have any other ideas with them. So, but this, it's also like indie comics pitch this as how they're going to save the day and they're going to save comics, but they're not really, they're not blown, they're not rising to the level of even manga. Like, there's the whole question of, manga versus American comics, and American, the American print industry is everyone's now, jumping on the bandwagon that of realizing that manga had already blown American comics out of the water. The thing is, that was true in the '90s. It was true in the 2000s, and it's true now. In the 2010s and now. The thing is that's kind of interesting and funny about all that is that the indie comics are like, yeah, we're about, we're about the revolution, and we're gonna appeal to the mainstream comic reader, but they don't. They're not even gonna come close because all their ideas are just Marvel and DC ideas, or not ideas, but Marvel and DC corporate properties, but just ripped off and then without really an original idea. It's like Conan, but and then there's nothing else after that.
That
And
by
that's
itself is not enough
yeah,
to
it's
begin with.
yeah, that's never going to be enough to
For
even
me,
come close to
especially,
manga.
not just, and it's not just for me either. It's a lot of people. Like, kind of like with whatever Vampirella and Red Sonja. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people are like, oh, Red Sonja's hot, Vampirella's hot. Okay, what does she do? She's hot. That's not anything.
and then you read the comics and they're utterly generic.
They're boring.
Yeah,
They're
they
downright boring, but people like glad hand themselves about like, oh, we're making women attractive again. You're really not doing that.
yeah,
You're not succeeding at any of that.
that's what they that and that's kind of that's not something that will bring back comics because it's easy and it's been done too. Is like, hey, hot chicks, which fucking absolutely go for that, but you have to have something like in anime. Um, it was kind of funny. I saw some whiny bitch was like, I don't even watch anime without tits anymore, and I thought it was kind of weird seeing him say that because there's something weird about saying like I love tits. There's something almost inherently
They're
gay
just guys,
sounding.
just guys who love boobs.
Yeah, it's just fucking nothing wrong with it. But the way that it's like, I love tits, I love big tits, and it almost sounds
But they're
inherently
bragging about
fruity.
it. They're bragging about it like they've invented them or
But
something.
it reminds me of that AJ Poopy Shits character that was like sounded totally gay, but it's like I just love chicks and the tits, and it's like, ugh. And I don't want to give Sam Roberts any credit for coming up with this stupid character, but it did kind of stick in my head even when I would fucking talk about like, yeah, fucking Laylee's got some big fucking tits, and it's like, really, tits. But I hate the word boobs because that's what girls say,
Yeah, girls who are afraid to
to
fucking
say
swear
fucking
or be
massive
dirty. You don't want to be
big
dirty.
fat
You say
motherfucking
dirty,
fun bags. Um,
naughty words.
yeah, dirty pillows. But the thing is, yeah, if you're gonna have that in comics, absolutely. But even anime that's about big tit decapitations or whatever, um, there's still something else to the story with that shit. When you have a fucking anime, any dumb fucking anime, there's a premise to the story. It's not just like, oh, she's got big tits. It's like this person, they
What
lost
is
their
she doing
family in a
with her
fucking.
big tits? She's got big tits, but she's also suffering greatly.
It's like usually in an anime, really what it's about is main character lost their family in a tragic popcorn fire, so they team up with chick with big tits to find the mystical, the tree of life, or whatever.
They're
Um,
trying to cook some fucking Jiffy Pop.
they were just trying to cook some Jiffy Pop. Everyone died, but
And the
that's
hot plate got away from them.
yeah. They were holding it in both hands, and then just like whoops, just one whoopsie, and your whole family's gone. It's very tragic. But that's again, that's the anime premise. Is there's some kind of there's a premise to the story, and then they throw in the fan service characters and that kind of shit. So again, there's something to it. But in American comics, it's just like here's the adventures of a girl with big tits, and then it's like she just stands around somewhere. It's like she starts off in a tavern, and some guy's like, "Heh, I bet you are a slut," and she's like, "I'm actually not." And then it's like, "Oh, they're gonna fight," and then she throws a punch, and he gets knocked out. Like some guy fucking an entire foot taller than her gets knocked out by her punching once with her fist instead of like maybe a palm strike to the diaphragm or like fucking lift up his arm and at least punch the lymph nodes, something like that. I don't know. You know me. I don't like to judge. But again, it's like generic every step. Like even that's even Red Sonja, but then the indie comics solution is okay, I can't get the rights to Red Sonja. So I'm going to make a red-haired girl with a chainmail bikini because you can't technically copyright or trademark that. I'll make a few other differences or some shit. Maybe I'll make her hair purple. I don't fucking know. Um,
It'll
but
be
then the
amazing.
exact
Oh
same
man,
thing
her hair
happens.
is purple.
Yeah, it's brand new. Her hair's purple. She's got a new hat, Stacy's new hat, or Malibu Stacy's new hat. But the whole then what happens in the indie comic version of that is she's in the tavern, some guy fucking cat calls her, whatever, and then oh no, she's gonna be, or it's off panel, the fight's off panel, like cut to outside the tavern, and there's noises, or
You didn't
she
want to see that, did
yeah,
you?
you didn't
No,
want
of
to see
course
that,
not.
but of course you've already seen it a billion times. But then alternatively is like she'll do some quip and walk away triumphant. The sort of the XKCD solution where it's like, there's the door. It's like, I have defeated you in this fucking straw man argument
They're
presented in
showing
this
you the
comic.
door.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's again that's the solution in indie comics is to take something, and you could list that with almost anything in indie comics, and the exceptions to that just get buried under thousands and thousands of examples of blatant ripoffs. Um, and you can even say some of the blatant ripoffs is like, oh, this guy making this blatant ripoff is cool though, or he's got a different take on it, or there's a twist to it, or whatever. But it's never really enough. I've read some of them, and every time I'm just like, it's just this more of the same. It exists. It's there. That's it. That's the indie comic solution. And again, it's bigger than like Comicsgate or the Kickstarter community or Indiegogo community or any of that. It's throughout all of and the problem with that is the fans. When a fan thinks that they can be a creator because they want that parasocial relationship with creators, so they want to then become the creator themselves, but they don't really have any ideas. They're not writers. Um, and then in a lot of cases, they're not artists either, so they have to hire someone to write and do the art. But there's a lot of different cases, but in most of the cases, it's just straight up a derivative knockoff. And one of the other problems with the community, of course, is that they always cover each other's asses. Um, so there's a lot of burying heads in the sand and a lot of making excuses for people just ripping each other off and ripping off customers and that kind of stuff. Like there's been, especially in Comicsgate, there's been more examples than I can even remember. There's a good 20 examples of comics that ran a campaign, took funding, then either got canceled or shipped massively late and or substandard quality in both print and the shipping, the mailing. Like comics that were mailed as junk mail, not in any container, not in a bag or anything. Um, and again, there's a lot of examples of people doing it right and making original interesting. Like every time I go back to Common America, because that's the basically my favorite indie comic. It's one of the only, actually, it's the only one I buy. Um, but
There's
also,
been
I read a
others
lot.
before that, even.
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, because again, I reward actual merit, not fucking not this sort of virtue signal merit where it's like I'm about all about rewarding merit, and then
We're fighting the SJWs.
yeah,
And it's
it's
like,
like
okay, how you doing that? We're going to rip off our own customers and then we're going to fucking dox them. And then we're going to send our war campaign after them. Okay, no. Stop that.
yeah,
Stop all of
that
that.
doesn't. Well, if you do that for even 1 second without speaking out against it, you're complicit in it. But on top of that is um, they would make these substandard comics, and then people would say, well, it's to own the SJWs at least, and it's like that's not rewarding merit, and they would say, we're rewarding merit by funding anything that says it's anti SJW, even if it's by somebody who's never created a comic before. It's like that's really not good enough. So again, that's one of the many big, big, big fucking problems with indie comics, and we've already been doing videos about the stuff about the problems with indie comics. We did the first videos that were about how manga was completely destroying American comics years ago, but of course,
Pushing their shit in.
yeah, we got false flagged for saying this kind of stuff that people really. I mean, after all, they had, a war campaign to false flag and attack and sort of sock puppet, shore up their narrative against anyone who spoke out against, the narrative and pointed out the bullshit. So basically, if you want to get our videos, most of our videos, which there's a lot of people in the comics industry do, including in indie comics, um, the best way to check it out now is go to our subscribe star where we have videos constantly going up. Um, there's going to be some videos for the $1 tier. In fact, I think there will be some. There's going to be a lot of bonuses and stuff going up over the next month. There's all sorts of shit I could point out that's going on with Subscribe Star. But if you're not on the Subscribe Star, you're missing out. You can join for just $1, and you'll get some videos, but the main tier is the $5 one. And I'm thinking. I shouldn't admit this, but I'm thinking next month I'm going to drop that to $4, just so more people can see more of the videos, because there's a bunch of videos going up throughout the next several months. And we're still going to do these public videos, and then we're still going to do the Shitty Webcomics Weekly public videos, which will also be nice. But we're going to do another video that will go up just for Subscribe Star backers about the some of the other biggest problems, even bigger problems in the indie comics community and industry than just the unoriginality problem. It'll be about the mental illness problem, which is debilitating in indie comics, and we'll be going into not only that but showing actual examples and shit, and that'll be for our Subscribe Star pay pigs. So check that out. The links below, and remember, should have listened to Shitty Webcomics.